infrastructure is absolutely critical to our success. And if we don't get it right, we notice that there is a significant reduction in the learning experience. So for the work we operate on campus in Oxford, what we're looking for there is the room to be at the right temperature, the right classroom resources to be in place. So that can come down to do the pens work. There's nothing more frustrating for participants and a faculty member when they take the lid off a pen, go to write on a whiteboard, and the pen doesn't work. Is the water in place? Is it refreshed? Is the classroom kept tidy? Also, the operational services that make sure that diet requirements are taken into account, that the logistics is seamless. And so there's a lot of work we put into these types of things, that the air conditioning is regularly serviced. Because when we get a very hot day in this country, our systems aren't tested that much. And then when they are tested, we can't afford for them to fail. So there's a lot of work we put into making sure the AV's okay, that the room's okay, that the logistics are okay. So that's very, very important that we've got professionals in those positions.
Ideally, once a school reaches a certain stage in its maturity and its development, you really need an in-house infrastructure in terms of a business development team that are going out there supporting executive education, that are working as sort of intermediaries, an interface in between the people who are delivering from the school and the clients out there in the marketplace. However, not all schools are suitable to start from that position, and often you have a central support services team that does all the contract and does some of the business development work, etc., that's located in the centre of the university and works with different faculties throughout. That's pretty much where we are just now at King's, but we're trying to move towards a system where we have an engine room and an in-house infrastructure within the business school itself. Executive education at King's is delivered through the institutional VLE just now. We recognise that often with executive audiences, they want to be treated somewhat differently from conventional students. So it helps to have some of the symbolic accoutrements associated with that, but the infrastructural costs associated with setting up a separate VLE are quite significant. And I think that's something that schools can think about doing potentially once you've reached a certain level in terms of size as an organisation and in terms of the amount of revenue you're bringing in through executive education as well.
At Henley, we have our own virtual learning environment, and that covers us for most situations. Those systems have a level of functionality which suits most circumstances. If, for example, if you take the case of our work with Sandhurst, with the Army, what we're required there to do is to provide online learning for officers who might actually be in the field in Afghanistan or wherever. And something like a normal virtual learning environment isn't going to be suitable for that. It won't have the required military security and all that sort of thing. So in that case, we will be using an external supplier who creates something specifically for us.
And then we're also doing a lot more online. And what we're noticing there is that some of those capabilities in terms of the platform and the IT infrastructure, we're having to become very good at partnering with. That world is moving so quickly that we made a decision that we're not going to invest our own capital in that. We're not experts in those platforms. And we want the agility to move where those platforms are working really, really well. And there's a lot of money that needs to be invested in keeping up with the competition. And so we look very much to third parties to do that. And one of the big challenges we have is how do we make sure that we don't outsource too much, particularly critical parts of the learning experience, which is what we should be bringing as a business school. We both integrate and keep separate our financial processes for executive education. What's kept separate is our custom work, and that has to operate through a subsidiary company with its own statutory board. That's largely for VAT reasons and under the current tax regulations in this country. But we have an integrated finance function. We very much operate one financial model for what we do, and we ensure that the financial data is integrated across the school.
I think the challenge for executive education is that it's a commercial activity. Okay, there's an academic side to it, but basically we're meeting clients' requirements. Often we have to go through procurement processes at clients, and that means we need to be much more commercially focused than the normal university activities would need to be. What I found is that we need to have a relationship with the university that enables the university to recognise the different kind of commercial environment that we operate in. Normal university processes are just not set up for that kind of analysis. I mean, typically, if you're thinking about launching an MBA or another undergraduate degree, it will be done over a number of years as a timescale. There'll be various committees for approval. In executive education, we might need to send out a response to a client within a matter of weeks, sometimes even days. And that means that I have to have the relationships with senior decision makers so they can understand the opportunity and hopefully give us the go-ahead, understanding the risks and the opportunities that are involved.
At King's, we have a central team which deals with contractual requirements and budgeting and costing and any faculty that does executive education. And the business school is not the only one that does executive education. We have health faculties, defence studies have significant executive education programs. They all run their contractual requirements through a central team in the university.
So typically, if we've got an opportunity to bid for work with a client, there may be some risks involved with that. It could be because we're delivering outside of the UK, it could be some contractual risks. And what I found to be really important in my role as Head of Executive Education is to have the right relationship with the university legal advisors and Pro-Vice Chancellors and others who have to make the final decision about whether to go ahead with the work. So if you like, it's that ability to influence and to provide enough information for a sensible decision to be made.
Real estate's incredibly important for executive education, despite us delivering a lot of what we do through a digital infrastructure. And that's because people still want to come to Oxford. And we've got 2 buildings. One I would say is very much fit for purpose, which has only been open for the last 3 or 4 years. Our other building is many decades old and is coming to the end of its life. Our estates people do a great job of keeping it going, but we feel the infrastructure creaking, and we're currently in the process of delivering a new building that will give us a platform for operating for the next 20 or 30 years. We also pay a lot of attention to the facilities we deliver in overseas or in hotels in the UK. Sometimes our client wants something delivered away from Oxford, and we have a whole quality assurance checking process that we'll put in place to ensure that those venues deliver what we need in terms of the high quality learning experience that we expect to put in place.
I think it's a very important question. I think that's an interesting tension that a lot of schools and universities face. We're lucky at King's in that we've just moved into Bush House on Aldwych, which is one of London's iconic buildings, which is very fit for purpose when it comes to executive education. I think that the building we were previously in was a sort of crumbling 1920s, 1930s breeze block type structure, which wouldn't necessarily be giving people the country club experience that they expect. So I think for some schools it makes sense for them to try and find a separate space where they can deliver executive education. The problem with that is that you're taking people away from the heart of where the school is and the school's identity, and is somewhat extracted from the core activities of the organisation. Whereas what we find is that executives want to come and have some sense that they're in a university and some sense that they're in a working business school.
At Henley, we are fortunate. We've got a wonderful building by the River Thames, an Edwardian mansion. And it's exactly the environment you think of when you think of executive education. So we're very lucky, and those kinds of facilities, I believe, are essential. You need to have a facility which shows to the leaders that you're working with, who might be on the C-suite of top companies, that you're operating in the same kind of environment that they would expect to operate in within their workplace. Generally speaking, normal classrooms for undergraduates are not the kind of environment you would want to teach executives in. Obviously, a lot of our programs are run away from the UK, outside of the UK, and those sort of situations we would work with hotels or with other venues. And again, you're looking for an environment which fits the learning experience and fits the expectations of the clients that you're working with. So yes, often that does require cost, incur some extra costs. But that's part of the nature of exec ed.